Today, I am going to break down three core things for you. One is how I got a single post on LinkedIn that generated over close to 700,000 views. I've had the head of AI organizations reaching out to me since then. Number two, I'm going to break down OpenAI's latest advanced reasoning module or model, if you will, ChatGPT 4.01, and walk through step by step what I did, how it's working. And so you can understand behind the scenes how to leverage it yourself. And then number three is I'm going to go through three specific use cases I am using it for today that I'm absolutely blown away with. So let me get into it. For those of you who don't know me, I actually help organizations implement AI skill transformation and completely revolutionize their organization within less than 2 months by upskilling their entire go-to-market team or executives on how to do that. So one of the things that I'm going to do is break down this video. And so let's get right into it. I'm going to share it with you now. I'm going to share my screen, okay? So this actually happened very quickly and very rapidly. Also happened while I was at Dreamforce. And so as you can see here, here's the post. What I decided to do is create a company in 8 minutes on my first try, right? So I know I had some haters in the chat being like, you didn't create a whole company. And I'm like, all right, I did the best I could in 8 minutes. So I stretched myself. And basically this was the post. As you can see here, it's got close to 700,000 impressions. I've had the heads of generative AI for multiple Fortune 50 companies reach out to me, want to connect, and have started talking with me on things. And so this is the example. So I'm going to break down really quickly, like kind of what I did. I'm going to get into the chat thread so you can see it. But real quick, if you're looking to replicate this or take advantage, at least from a media perspective, a couple core things that I did, which was crazy. I did not edit the video at all. I recorded on my first try, and it was like an experiment to see what would happen. I did it as soon as the model was released, put it up, and this whole process literally took about 10 minutes. So the real interesting thing that I would say of why I got some of the results I did with the output, which we'll get into in a second, is because I understood the core basics of how the models work. All right. And so that was one of the things. I also did a part two. So I'm going to break down the part one and part two next in the chat thread. So you know how to use ChatGPT 4.01, because it's basically like having a PhD level reasoning assistant for you that you can take advantage of. All right. On top of it too, I shared it with my network. And then on top of it, I shared it with some personal people as well. And that's really what I think had things take off. It was kind of slow the first few days, but then as you could see, it really blew up. All right, so now I'm going to get into more the advanced reasoning aspect of it. So in order to access this in ChatGPT, you have to click on this drop-down button. And within here, I'm just going to make this bigger so you can see it. In this drop-down button, your default should be 4.0, but there's preview and there's mini, right? Now, a couple limitations that these models have is when you look at preview and mini, you cannot drop files in there. It does not use custom instructions, right? So the core element is like you need to be simple and just talk in outcomes that you want. And it uses chain of reasoning thought automatically. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through here. And as you can see, what I did here is I said, okay, create a new sales team from scratch. I want you to act as a chief revenue officer who previously created $10 million division annually, starting from zero. So what I'm doing is I'm giving it a role. Still, I'm giving it a role so it understands what to do. And then at the same time, I'm starting a new division for my company, Strawberry Inc. The revenue goal is for the first 12 months is 10 mil. So I'm giving one a role to a specific outcome that I want. And then I'm also giving it context. So I'm basically saying, okay, the deals that I'm working on or my team will be working on are $100,000. The average sales length is 3 months and I don't have any appointments, right? So I want you to reverse engineer how to make it happen. So those are the questions I asked. Now, one of the things you got to have is a little patience because it does take some thoughts, or I should say time, as it goes through its thought. But here's what's really interesting. Like this is the entire thought process it went. So it crafted a sales initiative. It assessed productivity. It gave timelines, hiring strategies. Once again, it went back to productivity and sales strategies, workforce needs, lead requirements, which I loved. And then it got into mapping out even STR requirements. So it went through all, I don't know, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, close to 9 steps in like 27 seconds. And then what it's doing now is it's walking through and it gave the examples of this. Now, a couple of things that are pretty cool about this that I haven't always seen in the other models. Its formatting is good, very clean and easy to read. On top of it too, it talks about the structure And it talks about multiple different types. So I didn't say like I need SDRs, or I didn't say I need certain types of reps. It figured that out on its own. Okay. So what this will do is this crosses the chasm in terms of people having the capabilities that they don't have with advanced level reasoning to tap into. It also talks about a management structure you might want to consider. And then it talks about metrics and KPIs. Now, all these aren't perfect, is what I would say. But if you have no experience or you have experience and you can fine tune it, this is going to be absolutely amazing for you. It also talked about revised metrics. Okay. Talked about activity, capacity planning, timelines, and milestones, which I love. Like it gives like months 1 through 3. And one of the things that was super interesting about here is it talks about ramp up, which is pretty impressive because most models or people don't even think about ramp up. I've seen many founders miss that, right? And then it talks about key assumptions and risk and how to mitigate those, budget considerations. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole video every single step by step, but I want to give you the broad strokes because the next question I asked is how much capital do I need to make this happen, and give me ideas and sources it could use. So once again, for capital, it goes through that, breaking down needs, personnel costs, breaking down the estimate, identifying capital resources, financing options, weighing it, and then mapping them out. Okay, so those, once again, that's the second step. So I've asked 2 questions and it's gone through a chain of reasoning of probably about 18 different steps in less than a minute, which is really incredibly impactful. And then what it does is it breaks down capital required by different positions. I mean, I think 20 reps is really, really high, but 10 million is kind of asking a lot. At the same time, it talks about OpEx expenses. Really interesting that it assumes I need office space, but it talks about hardware and software, marketing expenses, travel and entertainment, even training programs. So that was pretty cool that it went to that level and depth of reasoning. And then it starts to talk about, just different capabilities from funding, whether it be internal, bank, venture capital, right? Even crowdfunding and angels. So it goes into that. And now what I started to do is finish this off, and I'm not going to go through every funding aspect. And I'm like, all right, create a 90-day plan to execute these next steps. And I want you to remember that. Don't forget about that. That's really critical, especially with what time of the year it is. Okay. And I basically just copy and pasted what it said the next steps were. And so then what it's doing is it's going deeper on it and then giving me that 90-day plan, going all the way from hiring to CRM systems, recruitment, and then a marketing strategy, continued recruitment. Okay. And then it goes through phases. Okay. So don't forget that. That's super critical. Then the next phase that I went through, because folks are like, you didn't build a company. So I'm like, all right, assume I only want angel investors, PE backed, or crowdfunding. And then I basically pasted in the next steps. So with that, what it started to do is go over the detailed budget. Like it's giving me instructions to do that, develop the funding strategy, and then initiate it. So those were kind of the areas that walk through to funding. Now I'm going to go to the next section so you can see, we don't have to go through all this. The other thing that I said is, okay, I need personnel to help me, not just with like hiring people, but also co-founders, right? And I said, I'm a high D, so I gave what type of personality I was based on, or I should say that embodies me, which I'm a high D on the DISC profile. And then it talks about like these different areas about what my expertise is and who I need a co-founder in. Okay, so let's say I need one in AI agents, machine learning. So the pretty cool thing is that it assessed my gaps and strengths. It identified roles and responsibilities needed. And then it said profile of ideal co-founder, right? Technical skills, soft skills, who do I want to look for? And then how to acquire that co-founder, which I thought was pretty cool. So it goes through that step. And then building a team, next steps, and then additional considerations, right? It's talking everything from legal and financial advice. And then once again, how do I break this down into the actionable, create a 90-day plan for me? And so it does the same thing. I actually like the executive summary where it says, define your vision or mission, detailed co-founder description, multiple channels, evaluate and select, and formalize the partnership with legal agreements, right? So it goes through that as well. And then last but not least, the number one thing you got to have with a company is a really good product, which we forgot about. Didn't necessarily forgot about. So I said, okay, now ideate on the product. It's amazing for my skill set and domain expertise. And then it gave actually like everything from AI powered sales enablement, lead qualification, sales coach, content marketing assistant. So give just a lot of examples. So just to kind of summarize this and break this apart for you as we're looking at this, like I went from effectively like, all right, an idea, I put it in the model, and then I drilled down in less than 10 minutes and had everything from capacity, potential funding, ideal co-founders, 90-day plans for everything. And that literally took me 10 minutes. Okay. Now, granted, you need to go back through and refine the metrics and make sure it makes sense for what you're doing and then refine it. But like I would say, I was really blown away with how simple and easy that is to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the use cases now that I think are amazing for this. Now that I broke down like the company building use case, because this is really applicable to a lot of executives right now, or even people that are looking at next year. So obviously, as of time of recording, we're in the early October timeframe, beginning of that. And so I'm going to show you an example of one of the things that I used this for that was pretty cool. Let me refresh it because it's not coming up. And I think you'll like it. So there's 3 really key use cases. I think 1, you could turn prompts into custom instructions for effectively, like if you're looking at it, like custom instructions for a GPT. So you can say, turn this prompt into GPT instructions, and then you can put it in GPT, test it, and start working through that. I thought it was exceptional at that. The other is what I'm about to show you, and that's also for creating custom instructions for yourself. Okay, so there's a capability which leads to, I think, close to 90% better results that most companies miss and ignore, especially if you're not very good at prompting. So I'm going to walk you through that as well. So I'm going to share this here. Let me share my screen again. You'll see what I'm talking about. So this one is pretty cool. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to click on your settings. You're going to customize chat, or I should say you're going to hit settings, and then you're going to go to personalization. Okay. What you're going to want to do is make sure custom instructions are on. I actually had this on. I was messing with it and trying out to put custom instructions in for Mark Benioff so that basically my AI tool acted like Mark Benioff. So I'm going to do my next video on that with the voice instruction so we can see how that operates. But what you're seeing here is this is how to set up custom instructions. And basically it's like, what do you want it to know about you and how would you like it to respond? So ideally, you're going to want to not play with it like I did and actually put it on your role, what you're doing and what you're focused on. So then every time you open a chat thread, it knows exactly who you are and how you want to be talked to. Okay. So I'm going to shut this off real quick so we can see. And then we're going to go back to here. And so what you'll see is I took a description from Perplexity, right? And so what I did in Perplexity was I pulled up and asked for the beliefs, the worldview, and the vision of Mark Benioff. And the reason why I did that was very specific. The reason why is because I wanted to get inside his head and really truly understand how that man thinks, what he believes in, and as well as like what's important to him. So if we go back over to this screen, I'm going to show you what I did in Perplexity, but it was really, really simple. And this is one of the tool I'm showing, or the strategy I'm showing you, is how to stack LLMs. So I said, I need you to create a digital avatar description of Mark Benioff, and I misspelled it or had a space in there. This needs to include his belief system, language patterns, most common words used, and interests. My goal is to use this sort of a dialogue with it so it feels like I'm speaking to him. Okay. Now, what I would say is Perplexity did a really good job because it broke down his belief system, his language patterns, his common words and phrases, interests, and then communication style. I thought it was pretty cool. So I took that from Perplexity and then basically I put it in here and I said, please turn this digital avatar description into custom instructions so that I can use to leverage the background and context and how to be spoken to. So I gave the 2 examples within there. The goal is to have it so I'm speaking, like I feel like I'm speaking to him. And then all I did was pasted all that right within there. Now what you're going to see is, and this is the 4.0 preview model. What you're going to see here is it basically breaks it into the 2 different sections, and it talks about his background and context and then how you want to be spoken to. One of the things that it did not execute on properly is it basically said, hey, you are, it went longer than the 1500 character limit. So I had to go back and had it short. Okay. So as you can see there, it formatted it tightened it up, and it made it look amazing. So that's use case number 2. So I think you're going to want to potentially leverage that. So once again, for GPT instructions, creating it, custom instructions for yourself. The other thing that's amazing right now is planning. So many people are going through annual planning right now, or goal setting, or things that they're looking at. I know a lot of folks on the corporate side are going through that now. Individualistically, you might not go through that in a few months. But what you're going to see with that is it'll crystallize exactly what you're doing, break it down from the idea all the way to the strategy to the execution, which is amazing. You'll be able to do that in minutes. And even if that's not the final draft you use, you'll be blown away because it's going to take something that would take hours and hours and hours to map out that you'll have in seconds. And then you can edit, refine it, and take it from there. So thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you need help implementing this at your company, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or actually just send me a DM. Also, my email address is ryan@whalesellingsystem. Feel free to reach out to me as well, ryan@whalesellingsystem.com, and let me know that you heard this episode, you were impressed by it, and you want to implement this at your company. So appreciate you joining me today, and we will see you all on the next video or episode.